think it's recording. Okay.
Let's go for the just video snob. Let's go with high definition. I work for Dods Parliamentary Services. If you haven't heard of Dods Parliamentary Services, I'm probably not surprised because it's quite specialised in what they do. Part of me being out here presenting is to try and get some more publicity, get Dods' name more recognised in the technology community. So I've got a presentation today about what I'm looking to do with Dods in terms of leveraging their existing enterprise application and looking at ways that we can integrate that with new platforms like mobile platforms to develop new innovative applications to create a better user experience. So there's the background. I'm not sure what kind of situation you're coming from here, but there are lots of organizations out there that have an existing enterprise application or several of them. And a lot of these applications kind of follow a very similar pattern. They've got some kind of persistent storage in a database, they've got some business logic in the middle, and a lot of them will have a web front end. And lately we've had this big rush to develop mobile applications because as time's going on, the media keeps talking about the fact that mobile is the new platform people are reacting to. Okay. It's the new platform that people are engaging with, and people are moving away from their desktops and their preferred devices, their mobile. So what I'm going to look into is the way, using Dods as an example, we may be able to take an existing application that we already have and integrate it with a new mobile application. So as I said, we've got at the most basic level your typical enterprise application. We've worked on lots of these, and after a while they all kind of start to feel a bit the same. We've got a user interface, business logic, some kind of assistance, usually some kind of integration with external systems. Have the ModelViewController pattern. I was going to make it look a bit more like an Oreo cookie, but I couldn't quite style the other layers as nice chocolatey brown, so I went with orange instead. So it's a bit more like a custard cream, but you get the general idea. You've got view on one end, controller or presenter in the middle. It's gluing things together with the model at the bottom. It's a very simplistic model. It's intended to facilitate the ability to have an existing application with a model and swap out a different view, so you can swap out web for a desktop application or mobile or some other means of presentation. And in order to do that, you typically create another controller that acts as the glue between the new view that you want to integrate. And this is a very simplistic model. In reality, it's usually not quite so simple. Particularly, most applications are distributed, particularly web applications. You've got code that's running in different places, and as such, in the past you've been able to have ModelViewController. If it's a desktop application, everything's on one machine in one place, running in one process. It's all together. You can have fairly tightly structured ModelViewController, but that doesn't really work the same when you've got a distributed application. Typically, you've got like multiple forms of ModelViewController. You've got a bit of it on the server side, and you've got to get that state and push it across to the client, a bit of it on the client side, so it gets a bit messy. So you've got the various different ways of rendering. The most traditional form, you've had server-side rendering, some form of server-side technology, whatever it is. Business logic feeds it full of data, it generates HTML that goes out to the client. It can be completely plain HTML that doesn't have any JavaScript or dynamic behavior in it. It just goes in and is presented, done with. That's progressed on. We talk about Web 2.0, which is a term I used to hate when it really first came out because I thought it was really nebulous, but the idea that it's more dynamic, and better than the old stuff in 2.0e, where you have a dynamic application that's got JavaScript and Ajax calls and some more dynamic flow in there. And that's progressing out to the point where we have these new technologies like AngularJS and simple page applications where all of the rendering is being done on the client. The server just deals with data and business logic. It doesn't care at all about rendering and presentation. Unfortunately for us, as I mentioned later, that's where our Dods application is, which has some useful properties. The idea is here at the bottom, you have desktop and mobile applications. Both kind of have a similar concept because it's a rich application. It's native to whatever platform. If that native platform happens to be a mobile device, or whether it happens to be a desktop, it's still deeply integrated with the operating system, has access to rich visual effects and all the animations and things that are difficult to achieve on the web. So, when it comes to trying to divide things up or thinking about mobile applications, there isn't necessarily a one-size-fits-all approach to how you do it. It really depends on the type of application. You think of something like a rich media application or a game, you'd expect that the mobile application is going to have the bulk of the code in there because you want to have it near the hardware and have it very responsive and leveraging the native resources of the device. And the server-side bit, in this case, would probably just be a bit of synchronized state that needs to go between different devices. If it's a multiplayer game, you just want to synchronize your plays, so the server-side bit ends up being quite light, and the client ends up being very heavy and rich and having lots of state in it. At the other end of the spectrum, I think of things like bank applications where banks are paranoid and can't have data on client computers because they will hackers and steal all that money, and it's like just put the bare minimum code on the client and try and keep as much as possible on the server. There are other reasons for doing that. Maybe for performance, if you have some kind of application that's really memory hungry and wouldn't work or perform well on the device, you can shove it back into some server farm and have all the heavy work done there and just have the light end client on the device. So then we get onto the Dods monitoring architecture. And if I haven't mentioned already, I am the technical lead for Dods monitoring. There's a story behind that, maybe I'll tell you afterwards, but basically I came in after 4 months. All the contractors who built it kind of one by one left. It's like, you now know more about this application than anyone else in the company. So that's kind of scary, so why do we make you responsible for it? So I then became the tech lead of this project, which has some advantages because given that I control all the RESTful endpoints, I can then tweak them for projects like trying to see if I can make a proof of concept mobile application that works with it. So basic structure of our application, we've got our AngularJS based client, and that speaks to a whole bunch of RESTful endpoints that are exposed by Apache Jersey sitting on a Tomcat server. That in turn makes REST calls to an internal server that's the content API that deals with talking to the database, dealing with files and documents and things like that, but it just works internally and make a call from the UI to the UI services that then delegates to getting content and data from other places. You have an indexing service based on Solar to help us find and search for documents. When documents come into the system, they go through an ingestion flow. I probably ought to explain a bit more about what the Monitoring++ application even does. The idea behind it is Dods is a political company. It's external to, it's not government owned, it's an external company. It's existed almost a couple of 100 years. And what they traditionally used to do is they used to get all these publications, compile them together, put them in a book. The book would go get published, sit in someone's library so they could refer to it. So it's all the political stuff that's happened. It's in a book. Go to the library and read about it. And over time, things have evolved and said, well, rather than publishing it and sticking a book, that still happens, by the way. You still make a book and it goes in the library, it probably stays there, and someone may read it still. But now we've moved on to, this is the 21st century, we have systems going out and scraping government websites at various different data sources, pulling all this data from various different political sources, cleaning it up, categorizing it, trying to figure out what it's about, getting in a state where people can look at it, there are clients who come along and say, I want to know when some debate gets published from the House of Commons about energy, and so I want to be notified of that, so then create a special rule or create to be notified, so when something comes out and it matches that criteria, they get an email saying, hey, you wanted to know about this? Well, it's just come out, there it is. To make that happen, as things get scraped, taken from websites, they get pushed into an ingestion flow, and it's all this elaborate flow of coming in, sitting in active MQ queues, going to Camel and going through all sorts of processes to do all the cleaning up, and then going into another queue, and then going to another phase, until eventually it ends up happily in our system, and then our users interact with it through the user interface. So a lot of it's based around either automatically being notified when something comes in, or explicitly searching for things you're interested in. And this is the arbitrary cat slide. This has absolutely nothing to do with the rest of the presentation. I just want to see if you're still listening. So, cat slide. This is the hazards of what can happen if you take cat memes to the extreme. This is Victoria and epic cat domination campaign. I thought that the cat memes were safely contained in the internet. Well, they just walk out of the station and think, oh my goodness, that's one big cat picture just dominating Victoria. So be careful, just cats. Anyway, moving on. So strategy. Why not develop some new applications to leverage these existing RESTful endpoints? RESTful endpoints don't care what they're talking to. They don't care if it's the JS application, whether it's a mobile application, whether it's a desktop application. They just say, you make the right REST calls, I'll give you the data, and I'm happy. So these RESTful endpoints are providing a natural boundary in our application, making it easy to swap out one technology for another. The server can just keep on focusing on exposing the functionality you want to expose, and the client can focus on trying to create a good, rich user experience for our clients. So, current interaction style, we use a website with email notifications. I mentioned earlier about the fact that you can go into the website, you can query, you can search for documents, say what you're looking for, put in terms, filters, you name it, look for things. Or you can create rules to say, here's some pre-existing queries, and notify me when something comes in that matches these search criteria. And that will be sent out via an email notification, and certain like email templates and things like that you can do with it. But in a nutshell, it's basically how it works. So the mobile application strategy is to say, well, can we improve on that? I want to be in politicians' pockets. Why don't you just be there? When something comes out, you just get a push notification instead and say, hey, this thing that matched your criteria has come out, and now you get a push notification to say, hey, look, pay attention. Things that you can do with a mobile application that can't really do with a web application, given that we live in London and may have had the experience of, I'm using the internet, oh no, I've just gone underground and I've lost it all. That doesn't really work very well with a web application when you suddenly any time can get cut off for data because you're travelling on the tube and going above ground and underground. So a mobile application can do some caching of data to say, okay, you've just lost data connection. That's okay, because I'm a native application and I can keep running, and I've just got some cache data that you can work with until you get a connection again. Things that you can't, it's vaguely possible to do that with mobile applications, and then not mobile applications, do it with web applications. There have been new advances made with HTML5, but even so, it wasn't really designed around that. It was designed with the idea that you would be connected all the time, and it's more difficult to achieve an offline experience. And then there are the sort of thoughts about, well, what can we do with this stuff once it comes on the mobile device? Particularly in the likes of Android, you have all these intents to say, well, you've got this data and you can interact with other stuff and say, okay, I've got this publication and it's from a debate. You can click on here and maybe go to YouTube and watch that really exciting debate that happened in House of Commons on YouTube, because there it is. Or you're really excited about this debate, so you want to email it to all your friends and say, well, go to email and type in all the context I want to share it with. So this developer versus customer. I've been in this situation before where I, as a developer, decide what I think the customer should like, and the customer has their own idea of what they like, and there is certain difference of opinion on that. I'd say if you have a project that the addition of lasers will just make it cooler, no matter whether the lasers are actually functional. It's just like freaking lasers that make anything cooler. And the customer's like, why did you do that? It's because the lasers. It's just you don't understand. But it's maybe an exaggeration, but this can happen kind of what developers think that the customers will like because they like it, they think it's cool, and the customers say, I don't want that. It's like, fine. So this is certain importance of trying to find out from the customer how they actually work and what things will actually help them do their job, and understanding how they use the application, actually watch them using it and seeing how they use it and how you might be able to use a mobile application to do what they do more efficiently. But I still think there is something to be said about the fact from my past experience that sometimes customers, particularly not tech-savvy customers, don't know to ask for certain things because they don't know it's possible. So developers still can come up with innovative ideas because they say, the technology exists to do this, you don't know to ask for this because you don't know we can do it, but did you know that we can actually do this other thing? So, Google Glass, I've bought a pair, I've noticed, took a video of a cat chasing a laser pointer with Google Glass. That's the pinnacle of the Google Glass experience. But it occurred to me that we have this system, and what it essentially does is it runs queries against our backend data. So I said, well, why don't we do voice queries against our backend data? Because we can. And imagining get your Google Glass on and say, okay, Glass, Dods, show me all the debates about energy from the House of Commons within the last month, and just go boom and just be awesome, and it's there. And it's yeah, I did that just with my voice. I just, I made that happen, and I'm cool. So, in order to make that happen, you may have to develop an application, look at different terms that can be recognized out of what you said, things like phrases like House of Commons, and say, okay, that's a source of data that I know how to put into a query. What actually happens in an existing application with AngularJS is it will construct a JSON object that gets sent to our backend system. It has all the different search criteria, things like the source, the time constraints, you say it's in the last month, any kind of keywords and things like that. And all that kind of information that we've been traditionally been put together using a web form could, in principle, be constructed for voice commands if we can recognize things out of what's said. And in principle, it shouldn't actually be all that hard, he says confidently, because he hasn't done it yet. But you say, oh, how hard can it be? Come on, it's just technology. So that was my plan. I'd hoped to have some kind of crude demo working today, but as I'm the tech lead of the Dods monitoring application, and sometimes things go wrong and sometimes I have to work late because that's actually what they pay me to do, not play with Google Glass and cats and lasers and stuff. I haven't actually got anything working in time for today, which is unfortunate, but I'm connected with social media and will be blogging and maybe uploading videos as I make progress to let you know what's going on. So I talk about, as I mentioned, reusing the same structure, using voice commands to build queries, get results, optimize those results, render them on the small Google Glass display, have different concerns, but in principle it should all work. So, it's like, yes, Prime Minister. It's, okay, Glass, what are you planning to do with it? How about, okay, Glass, show me debates from the House of Commons about energy in the last month that needs to be fixed. You'll get that corrected on the slides that you got out. And these aren't in any way rushed at all, do that? Yes, Prime Minister, we can do that. So why Google Glass? It's actually really rather an unashamed publicity stunt. So I work for Dods, I deal with the technology community, I keep dealing with people and say, who do you work for? Dods. Who? Dods. Who? Dods. How do you spell that? D-O-D-S. Who are they? Well, let me tell you. It's like, okay, if I can achieve one thing here, people will know who Dods are by the time I'm done. I don't know how many conferences I'll have to present at. It's like, they might not necessarily want to work for us, but they will jolly well know who we are if I get my way. So that's what I'm doing. And I'm thinking, what might actually attract a lot of attention is freaking Google Glass. So I bought a headset, and I'm working with it to try and do some innovative stuff. Martin Beck, who's the CEO at Dods, had a big company-wide presentation, and he made a remark about the fact that people have this perception of Dods as being a bit of an old-fashioned company. He mentioned it's been around for almost 200 years and creating a book that goes in the library. and it's not really been on the tech community's radar. It's like, what can I do to try and make, again, Dods recognized in the technical community in a good way? It's like, I know freaking Google Glass, so that's what I'm doing. So, yeah, I'm not even ashamed to admit it's a publicity stunt. I think realistically, recognize the fact that you don't actually need a headset that costs £1,000 to make voice queries. You can actually just talk to your phone directly, and I think that in reality that's probably what the majority of users will actually do. It's like, you know, some politicians might use it, especially if they can expense it. You know, they like expensing stuff after all, so just expense a £1,000 headset because they need it, and an extra house and whatever else. So there may be a market for it. So this was the bit where I was going to have a demo that I don't really have, but what I can show you, just I bought cables and stuff. You can see what Google Glass UI looks like. I don't know how many of you have actually played around with it, but I'm just hoping this works because it's demo time, and we all know what happens at demos. It's like, this was working fine earlier, and now I'm going to demo it, and then it won't work, but let's just try and remain hopeful. No, shh, go away. So following the first hurdle, I can't open it. There we go. Let's connect this here. So if I hook up my phone to the projector, from the phone I can get onto the Google Glass app and activate a screencast. So it's a sleeping mode. Turn the glass. Oh, is it doing it? Just my cable's connected, so the spooky is it's like, I'm not actually connected here. It's still showing what's on the screen when you're connected to something else. You can do it.
You want me to turn on the light?
You can do if you like. It might help, but it's just like, come on, detect that I'm connected to something else. It was working great earlier, but it's a demo.
It's not recognizing the device?
It says the HDMI cable's connected, but it's just kind of spooky. Oh, hang on. Let's just do that. Just thinking about it. Come on. Try one more time. If it doesn't work, just move on. HDMI. There we go. So this is what I can see. This in my head gives me visions of playing Deus Ex and Alex Jameson and Jacobson viewing through JC Denton's eyes through the Infralink and all that jazz, but we're not quite at that point yet. It's still a headset, it's not bio-augmentation, but it's only a matter of time, let's be honest. But I can pretend. So I can do something like say, okay Glass, take a photo. Yeah?
Of the cat.
We're done there. Then after having done that, when it's thought about it for a bit, it should bring up, okay Glass, share. Yeah, this bit is really flaky. I swear it must default to send, so if it doesn't recognize what I'm saying, it just assumes that I'm going to send it. Share this with Twitter. Boom. There you go.
Cool.
I did that with my voice.
You kind of did like the Superman pose. Can I see that again? There we go.
Say,
managed to expense it, right?
No, I'm actually the crazy guy who paid out of my pocket. Maybe they'll give me a bonus which will make some dent in what I've actually spent buying the headset. But no, this is vindication. We've got to make Dods get noticed. It's a high purpose. And who can put a price on that? Come on.
Yeah.
Okay.
But just imagine that interaction style, but using with an application. You have a verb in there to say your particular application, so it might be say Dods monitoring. Okay, Glass, Dods monitoring, and then you get your options available. Go back to plugin. Yep, sure.
Your Glass still have to talk to a device you have to connect to your laptop.
It only does that for the data connection. I didn't realize that originally because I first came across Google Glass at Shazam when it was still in the early stages, and I thought the brains of the operation was the phone. That was kind of all the CPU was being used there, and it was just kind of more of a visual thing. But actually, it's quite self-contained. It just uses the phone when it wants to connect on data, and so it can sync contacts and things like that. But it can actually work quite happily without any device at all. But you can't share anything because it doesn't have data connection.
So where do you get the internet connection from without that device?
Well, you just have to wait. So I can actually use it one of two ways. Either I can wait till I have an internet connection again, or I can just plug it in with USB like it's a camera and download my pictures and videos and send them that way, which I've done before for some of my videos because it's a bit more convenient sometimes. So that's the demo bit. So still in the pre-prototype stage. It would have been awesome to demonstrate something. First step I've got to get over is the whole authentication thing, because our application uses this central authentication service, or CAS, which is this really badly documented central location service that happens to rhyme with ass for good reason, because it's a pain in the ass and I hate it. But first step is, in order to talk to Dods, you have to actually authenticate, and then once you're in, you can access the endpoints. That will be step one on creating the application. I mentioned progress on the application I can share on YouTube and blog and do all that fun social media stuff about. So even though I haven't got anything ready today, it's still work in progress. There's a Google Glass hackathon that I'm signed up to happening this Saturday where I hope to try and make some headway with it. There are two Google Glass headsets. It's like, why have one Google Glass headset when you can have two for twice the price? So I'm the guy who owns not one, but two Google Glass headsets. And there's another story behind that about me going to DevOps London and talking to Google guys and saying, can I get Google Glass? No, it's only available in the US. Like, dang it. I remember Curtis at Shazam had a Google Glass headset and he was selling it, so I contacted him and he's in Palo Alto. So I said, he's still selling that headset, so now I've sold it. But if you want one, I can buy one on your behalf. He's like, I'm listening. So what about if you just send me some monies and backhanders via PayPal and I buy one and just ship it over to the UK? So that sounds like a plan. Because I want to demo it for DevOps UK, no, not DevOps UK, DroidCon UK in October. And we talked about the fact that Google said sometime they should make the program available around the world, but we both kind of agree that sometime it's probably not going to be in time for DroidCon. Long story short, less than a week later I get this email from Google saying, Google Glass is now available in the UK. It's like, damn you Google, damn you. It's like, 1 week, all I had to do was wait one freaking more week and I could have just bought it in the UK. And I evidently did, but that's another story where impatience and too much surplus income obviously leads to excessive numbers of Google Glass headsets. But the long story short is that now I have a Google Glass headset. There's another application called Dods People, which is a big political people database. It's like, who's who in politics? Go through and say, hey, this is David Cameron, here's his constituency, here's stuff he's talked about and done recently. Here's a picture of him with a cat and a laser pointer, that kind of stuff. So he's the tech lead for that. Should have put on here. No, go back. Tech lead for Dods People is a guy called Kevin O'Dwyer, who's actually gone to the other presentation, so he's representing Dods over there and not being in my presentation. But that's okay, it's like, you go, just let me know what happened. But he's got a stronger background in mobile development. He's actually got this really cool star map app that he created for BlackBerry back in the day and ported to Android. And he's a rock star, but won't acknowledge he's a rock star because one of these people who's humble and just plays himself down all the time. It's like, come on, you just ported Java PC thing into JavaScript and made run in the browser. That's pretty freaking rockstar. Come on. And it's like, no, it's just, and it's like, one day I'll convince him that he's a rock star, but I'm just working on him at the moment. But anyway, he's not here, so I can compliment him behind his back and can't do anything about it. So, between the two of us, I'm hoping we can do stuff. And if we put ethics out of the window and thinking of imaginative uses of it, and thinking, what would politicians really like to do with our data? And thinking, you know, backbenchers, they're sat in the back of the cabinet and there's some presentation going on about new tax law, and they're probably bored and just, you know, get on their mobile device and get the Dods application and go through Dods people, say, here's my political rival, and click on the smear campaign, go through, find out all the publications that are embarrassing pictures, whatever else, and just say, use Android intents, say, share this with, what social media do you want to slime them on? And just, there's probably some ethical objections to this, but given the general things that go on in the lead up to a general election, I bet politicians would be all over it. I might have a hard time selling it to management, but I think there could be a market for this. Maybe we need to partner with some company without any ethical constraints and they can make that happen. But just, you know, sky's the limit. Just think about imaginative ways of using this data. And so there's two different applications. You've got the monitoring and you've got the people. The fact that all the monitoring information is being published by people who are in the people database, there's a natural connection between the two. Maybe to link back and forth and say, okay, who's this person, jerk, who brought out this bill and cut all these benefits and stuff? Let's find out where they live and send them an angry letter, you know, that kind of thing. So there are possibilities, and hopefully between the two we can explore that. So I mentioned before, I'm the only Carl Yokel I've ever come across. So if you take my name, stick it into Google, everything that comes up is actually just me. It's like, I go for email addresses, I sign up for anything, I just stick in my name and it says, it's not taking, yes. It never is, because there's only one of me that I'm aware of. So there's some of my contact. I've got my business email, personal email, Google+, which will connect you through to YouTube, because it's linked there. It's Twitter, LinkedIn, and The Enlightened. Because if you don't know what that is, you should, because it's important. So that's it. That's the presentation. Are there any questions?
Any questions?
No questions.
Okay.
You've got a legacy website and you want to put RESTful on it.
We might want to end up looking into doing what we did. And I will admit that the whole Dods monitoring application is a bit of a beast that feels like, yeah, you can tell that a lot of contractors worked on this and worked on it and left, and it's a bit of like a testament to CV-driven development that they said, I'm going to use this technology and I will find a way of integrating it with Dods monitoring plus somehow, because I want it in my CV very much, and so help me, I'll get it in there. So we've got all sorts of cool technology in the stack, not always used in the most useful way, but I'm kind of digressing from your question. What you're saying about what you probably do there is similar to what we did, is we have the server-side focusing. All it does is exposes a bunch of RESTful endpoints, and we use the single-page application structure with Angular.js, where that does all the client rendering. There's no rendering going on the server side, which means it's very easy just to drop that out and have something else talk to it. I'm realistic in knowing that if you've got a lot of code already there generating websites, it may not be the easiest thing to swap that out overnight, but it's at least something to aim for. That I'm really glad that our application is structured that way, because it makes my life a lot easier. If it was a more traditional thing where there was a lot of web pages being rendered on the server, it would be a lot harder to think about mobile applications. But it being that way is really helpful. And it doesn't just have to be mobile. I mean, in principle, you could write a desktop application. I'm not sure if that's really trendy anymore, but you could if you wanted to. In principle, just drop something out, put something else in. Any more questions?
Do you have documentation for the API? Dods
Yes, we do. I'm actually, which is kind of sad for the tech lead. I don't know how much of that is actually out in the open, because one of the things my line manager is Paul, and one of the things he's been very big on is actually making sure we've got all our REST endpoints properly documented, because so many people have come and gone. It's been a bit of a mess, but one of the technical debt issues I've tried to deal with is the fact that so many different people worked on the endpoints that they have implemented REST in a different way and used status codes in a different way, and I want to create one standard policy, go through all the endpoints and make sure that we're all actually using REST in a consistent way across all that. So our documentation will have to evolve. But I just deal with the technical side, I don't deal with the business side, so I don't actually honestly know at this point if we have partner companies that are directly dealing with our data. I kind of assume we do, because I know we do a lot of stuff with the BBC and they access our services, but a lot of that I've just assumed has been going through the website. I don't know if they're writing software to directly go into it, but there's a contractor who was with us called Carlos Roman, who went over to the BBC for the European elections and mentioned he was working with Dods data to do that, so it's conceivable that he might have been using our endpoints. But I'd have to ask him, because it's very easy when you're inside the company, you don't actually see things from the customer's perspective, and it's like, I'm just asked to make it work and fix problems. I don't actually know a lot about the business relationships that go on with external companies and how it's actually getting used outside. So that's probably a good thing to find out on my to-do list.
And it's interesting because I think if you're providing services, at least to the customer or to other services that are getting that information, for you to maintain, those endpoints. Just as an example, for example, Twitter had all of these endpoints, and at one point in stage, they actually shut a bunch of them down, and a bunch of services that were actually using those. I don't know if you remember that.
I'm not sure about that, but I've heard of similar things. I think a good example has been the whole Google Android experience. The older version of Android just don't work anymore because the endpoints that used to power them, or the server-side bits, are just getting shut down because, like, okay, this is an older deprecated version of Android we don't care about anymore, so just get rid of the back-end services. So we can't access the predecessor to the Play Store, which I can't remember what it's called, but it's essentially like the Google App Store. You can't go to an older device, you can't get apps anymore because that's gone away. And there is an element with with these distributed applications based on back-end services that you can't always assume they're going to be there forever. If they go away and you've got legacy applications still using them, at some point that application is going to stop working if the endpoints aren't maintained anymore. So yeah, it's a consideration. I don't know, as I mentioned, that as part of Dods business that they're doing enough of that yet. I certainly haven't had anyone complain about that happening. Right? Angry customers saying, "You changed the endpoint, you jerk."
Yeah, I suppose consistency is very important in a way. So.
Yeah, so I think at this point, particularly if we were going to do that kind of thing, I would like to clean up our endpoints quite a bit and make sure they're all to the standard that I would like them to be before I give them out to third parties. Because I think there's still some work to be done there, but it's certainly a possibility.
But don't you think that's part of the shortfall of the RESTful API? Because normal software, when you have depreciated API, then that's either in programming or desktop. People can migrate and upgrade to the next version.
I think Twitter did that recently. Well, I say recently. Well, I don't actually know because I've never interfaced with them. But I know that they have the principle of versioning where they had like the V1 of the API, and want to introduce new functionalities, and they create new endpoints that are like a different version. We don't do anything like that because I don't think we've been having to worry about external parties enough for that to be a consideration. But I think it would be a good idea in principle that we could version our API. But that's something to look for in the future. But at the moment, more focus on just keeping them clean and consistent before I want third parties dealing with them if possible.
Any more questions?
More questions?
Going once, going twice. All right, guys, give me one shot. Carl.
So I think it's recorded. I will upload this to my YouTube channel, which you can find via my Google+.
Yeah, if you can send me the YouTube link, and perfect.
Yeah.
All right, Carl, thanks a lot. Appreciate it. All right, guys, that's it. Like I said, always big thank you to Carl, to Innovation Warehouse, and to BlackBerry. They're actually like sponsoring this meetup, actually for all the food. There's plenty of food and drinks. And thanks to everyone who made it. Next time hopefully we'll have a bigger turnout. And as always, yeah, enough talking, go eat. Actually, what I wanted to do was try something new. If we can get like in a couple tables, just put the pizza off so we all can just like get around and just actually like communicate and just eat. And like stuffing our faces, but actually talking and stuffing our faces. And that's very social. So yeah.
Stop it.
Right here.